32-31, a thriller. Ducks now number 2.
Number 2 in what, Ohio State? 5?
Well, 4 or 5, depending on which poll you look at. But they didn't
For
drop.
the AP.
Yeah, Ohio State
didn't drop far.
Ohio State's fine. They just can't afford to stub their toe again. And for Oregon, I'm not going to say it's a guarantee you're in the Big Ten title game, but boy, you got a long runway to get into the Big Ten title game because, there's just not a lot of meat left on the schedule there. And that puts you in the catbird seat right there.
All right, so let's there's so many elements of this game to discuss, and we will get to all of them. I've got heavy notes here, but since you brought it up, the offensive pass interference.
Sure.
So 1st and 10 at the Oregon 28-yard line. Ohio State driving, and I think a big giant gulp after they got that first down. That throw over to I don't remember if that was Smith or the other guy.
Ibuka.
Yeah, I think you're right. On the sideline, and you're like, oh boy, here they're already in field goal range.
Yeah, and they've got a good kicker. I think they said at that point. I think I saw someone saying he's like an 83% guy from there. Even if so I thought at that point, maybe a run or two, you still have a timeout, maybe a couple easy passes, try to get it down around the 20, 25, and now we're kicking a field goal and we're about to get an instant classic one way or another. And then the PI called, and I think Ohio State melted down after that. So this is where we can talk about the PI call. But to me, the reaction from Ohio State from there with the crowd noise and everything, you can't allow as a top 5 team on the road and a coaching staff and a veteran quarterback, you cannot allow that call to send you into meltdown mode. And I think Ohio State crapped the bed after that.
So 1st and 10 at the 28, Will Howard passing complete. 2nd and 10, Howard completes the pass to Smith.
Yep.
Watching on the broadcast, we did not see the actual pass interference, but we were alerted to it because they pulled him back to the 43, 15-yard penalty, and that was on Smith. So what do you think? Like Joel Klatt said, he thought it was a bad call. Boy, I tell you, as a lay fan, and dude, I am no expert on any of this stuff, but looking at that seems clear pass interference to me because he just shoves the guy out of the way, which is what allowed him to make the catch. So that's what it looks like to me.
To me, I don't think he shoves him. In order to get offensive pass interference, which doesn't get called very often, there usually has to be a clear double extension. That to me was the I forget who the Oregon DB was. I forget who was in coverage there. Sorry, it escapes me right now.
I was just looking at it too. Hold on.
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head if that was Muhammad or not. But like you look at the play before that, and you look at a bunch of the plays, and there were some PI calls.
That was Nico Reed.
Number 9. There were some plays like where Ohio State got called for pass interference because they were just blatant pass interference calls. They were dragging guys down. Like they couldn't stay with Oregon's receivers. But that they had let them be physical most of the night. In the play before, the incomplete pass, there was more contact and more grabbing on that than anything you saw on the offensive pass interference call, and I didn't really see an extension. I saw kind of like a shrug, and I think what happened there was Smith was putting his feet in the ground, and the Oregon DB was still backpedaling, and they were both kind of reaching out for each other. You can see Reed kind of going to put his hands on him, and Smith kind of doing a little bit of a shrug, and his momentum kind of carried him forward. Look, that's why I said, to me, that's a 50-50 call.
So Reed just lost the battle.
I think Reed lost the battle.
But it looked worse.
It looked worse because he was off balance and stumbled. I think had Reed been in better position and he doesn't have that reaction, that call never gets made. But I think because of the momentum, and I think he was caught off guard with the little dig route that he was running there. And then when he went to put his hands on him and Smith was underneath him, I think the reaction to it, and I don't necessarily think it was a sell job. I just think he was off balance, and I think it made it look bad. But to me, and it wouldn't matter what side this is on, if you're letting the guys be physical, and I applaud the fact that they let them be physical. I applaud that they were letting those two teams go at it. And I didn't think there were a lot of ticky-tack calls, which I appreciate. So for in that moment, the biggest moment of the game, for me to call what I think is a 50-50-ish ticky-tack sort of thing, I'm just not a fan of it. I do not like games being decided based on that. But I've always said this, very rarely does one call make or break a game. And Ohio State had a dozen plays they could have closed that thing out. And afterwards, they still had plenty of time and they didn't need to melt down. And the fact that they let the clock run out with a timeout still in their pocket gives me no sympathy. If that would have been the last play, right? And I don't know, like, I don't know, strip sack or whatever, maybe I would have been like, well, that kind of sucks for Ohio State. But the fact that you weren't aware that the clock was going to start, because remember, that ball was caught inbounds. So the moment that the referee set that, the clock runs. They let 10 seconds run off the clock.
Yep.
And then the Oregon 12th man penalty, which I kind of think was on purpose, which by the way,
we'll get to that in a second. But it goes
I was
from
going to say we could get that in stopwatch, but whatever we want to do.
It goes from 22 seconds. So they get the penalty. It goes from 22 seconds down to 10 seconds because they didn't have their S together.
Yeah.
Ohio
Exactly.
State. So they lost 12 seconds.
12 seconds.
And then they threw another incomplete pass. I think
Yep.
that was the breakup on the other
Yeah,
side.
on the other side.
I think that was Muhammad.
So to me, when you end up with 2 seconds short to get your field goal off and you bled away how many? I don't have any sympathy for you. U.S. to the bed. That's on Ohio State. They still could have recovered and won that game, but they didn't. They melted down in the biggest moment because your coaching staff and your players weren't on the same page, and I think you let the crowd get to you. So
well, there were a couple things that
to
Oregon.
me, no sympathy.
Yeah, I mean, no one has any sympathy for Ohio State when they lose. Come on, but I do think Oregon deserves a little credit in one, the pass breakup on the other side. The very next play was a really nice play. I think that was that same play, and then the penalty. So now you get to 3rd and 25 at the Oregon 43-yard line. 10 seconds left. So they lost 12 seconds by not being ready to snap the ball after the pass interference
call.
So 10 seconds left. Incomplete short pass to Smith, but Dan Lanning has 12 men on the field. Illegal substitution was the call.
Yeah.
And this is after the fact. Lanning wasn't even asked about it after the game.
Yeah.
But after the fact, it was like, well, wait a minute. He might have done that on purpose because you lose. So the play was 4 seconds, right? So it goes from 10 seconds to 6 seconds. So he would rather give them 5 yards, but also gain the 4 seconds.
It's a trade you'll make.
So so I think people put 2 and 2 together after the fact.
I think he did it
that
on purpose.
Lanning did that on purpose. He has still yet to be asked about it. I think his thing tonight is in a couple of hours.
I think it's at 6:45. I'll double check.
He'll
the
be
time.
asked. Somebody will ask
because
him.
his time was super limited on Saturday night. They had very few questions,
Yeah.
but it is the talk of the town. So yeah, I think he'll be asked about
So
it.
you think it was
I
on
do.
purpose?
Well, I went back, and believe me, I went back and watched this, and for people yelling at me about the OPI, look at it. Dude, I have watched that play up close 10 different times. And when you watch it, they ran a D lineman off the field, right, to get to the 11 men. And then right at the last moment, they just walk a DB out.
They
and
just throw him on there.
I think it was intentional.
And it was coming out of a timeout, which makes me think even
I
more
think
that
it was.
would have
I
been
think it was
buttoned
intentional. And by the way, I'm pretty sure now in the NFL they have this now where you get the time back on the clock. It doesn't bleed it so this
Right.
doesn't happen.
Didn't Belichick do this?
Belichick did this. I think this is the loophole. I think it was the
Yeah.
loophole that wasn't
They're
closed.
going to have to change that.
And I think they did it. And by the way, if that's the case, kudos. Like I said, I think Oregon outcoached Ohio State. And then for Will Howard to try to pick up an extra 10 yards, I get it. You don't want to kick a 60-yard field goal, but you got 6 seconds left, man. The moment he double clutched the ball, I'm like, you dumbass. And then you're running, and I thought to myself as I'm watching it, I'm like, all right, he's going to get about 6 yards and slide. No, he's going for 10, and then he does a little juke, and I'm like, I'm just sitting there. I couldn't believe it. I literally couldn't believe what I was seeing.
He got lost in the moment. I just sent you guys both a still frame of that, of him. His hand, he's going palms up mid-slide.
Dude, it's
He
unbelievable.
realizes it
Yeah.
like, oh, God, what did I do?
It was
Well, you just
a
screwed up.
It was the week before. I said, I don't know if I'd seen anything quite as dumb as when Nico, the quarterback for Tennessee, was like on like the 25-yard line and needed a touchdown to win the game, and he ran out of bounds. The clock was at 0-0, and he just ran out of bounds, didn't throw the ball. And then like Will Howard's like, hold on, hold my beer, watch this. You got 6 seconds. What internal play clock? Do you think you have time to run 15 plus yards and then slide, my man, after a double clutch?
Just pertaining to nothing about Will Howard.
Yeah.
On the last drive, did he fall down
He
all
sacked
the time?
He sacked himself.
He was like a weeble wobble. Like he couldn't stand up.
And I feel bad for him because I think Will Howard and Dylan Gabriel, by the way, played about as good a game as you can play. And we'll talk about Ohio State's decision to play man coverage because they didn't think Dillon could beat him throwing the deep ball. Great plan, by the way. But Will Howard played a really good game.
Ball,
and the Ohio State offense, even being down 2 of their very best O-linemen, I thought Ohio State and Will Howard played a really good game. So the only sympathy I have is that Will Howard is going to get buried. And Will Howard is not the reason why they lost that game. He played really well. It's just...
Yeah, but this game's a footnote, man. It's all about how you finish in December and January.
Yeah.
This won't be remembered, but right now it's probably pretty good talk radio there in Columbus.
Oh, gosh, yeah. It just... you can't have those things. But yes, I did think to myself, is he like missing toes because he's got terrible balance?
He does have terrible balance. He just kept falling over.
I've never seen someone in a 2-minute situation like that where the only thing you can't do is take a sack and then you sack yourself.
He just keeps falling.
He just fell.
Stand up.
Do you think it's a ball security thing if he just falls over, assuring himself he won't fumble?
Yeah, I just think he has. I think Suke's right. He just has bad balance.
Bad balance, yeah.
That's unfortunate for a high-level athlete.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, like I used to go out like on screen passes all the time, and my coach, I was the worst screen blocker of all time. And my coach would be like, "What the hell are you doing there?" I'm like, "Balance, man. I don't know what to tell you." I get in the open field. There's a lot of
bull in a china shop. Nobody knows.
There's not a lot of fluidity to it. And I think Will Howard just has, sometimes you're just not the most graceful guy. And as good as Will Howard plays, he ain't winning a medal on the balance beam anytime soon.